Hi guys, my name is Patrick Johnson. This is Web Accessibility 2.0. A lot of you have been doing 1.0, right? The state template is supposed to be 1.0 accessible when you get it. That doesn't mean you can't change that, but it is supposed to be 1.0 accessible. So what I'm going to do here today is, first I'll introduce myself. My name is Patrick Johnson, of course. I've been the Internet Coordinator and the Webmaster at the Department of Rehabilitation since 1996. This is my phone number, my email address, and you can also send it to webmaster email address at DOR. You don't have to write all these down. I have a bunch of sheets of links and stuff that I'm going to give you guys. So you don't have to write them down. You can come up here and get one of these links, link pages, and that will save you from having to do a lot of writing. So, first thing I want to do is get into a little bit of the history. They hit some history a while ago, I noticed. I'm going to go further back than that. In 1998, the Rehabilitation Act was amended, and they created the Section 508 standards for web pages, among other things, copy machines, teletype machines, phones, printers, all kinds of stuff. But mostly what we were interested in here is subsection 1194.22, which was the web standards, where they were telling you certain things that you needed to do to make your websites accessible. So about that same time, or a little bit after that, in 1999, the World Wide Web Consortium came out with their guidelines, which went way further than what 508 did. And they called that Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, what a lot of people call it, WCAG 1.0. 2001, the state of California came out with its first template. It abided by 508, and that was questionable, but it was supposed to be 508 compatible. 2003, California finally adopted the Section 508, which they were really required to do, because 508 said you have to abide by this standard if you're going to do business with the federal government. Since the state of California does business with the federal government, we had to abide by 508. Well, they finally made it law in 2003. So that was California Government Code 11135, if anybody that wants to know, right here. In 2005, there was a push to make things go further than 508 in the state of California. So the governor appointed the State Portal Steering Committee, which included the State Portal Review Board, which included the state CIO, and then the State Review Board created the Information Organization Usability Currency Accessibility Working Group. Yikes. IOUCA. The state CIO used to call it IUCA. A lot of us used to call it IOU California. Anyway, the IOUCA developed three things. They created the usability standards, they created accessibility standards, and they created the presentation and separation of content standards. So the accessibility standards, which is what I'm talking about here, was based on not only 508, but we went further and we included the WCAG 1.0 AA priorities. So we also suggested that you go to AAA if you can, and that's always a good thing. And the further you can go, the better. If you want more information about the IOUCA, there's a website down here. It's on Web Tools. You can dig down in there into the history and you can find it. So in 2006, the Portal Review Board and the Portal Steering Committee adopted all of the IOUCA standards. And then in 2006, the second state template was created, and it abided by the IOUCA standards, which was 508 and WCAG 1.0. In 2008, the W3C decided that wasn't enough. They decided, okay, let's go further. I guess they were getting a lot of complaints about it was tough to check and all this stuff. So they started creating WCAG 2.0. And we'll get into that here in a second. 2010, the third state template came out, and it met the IOUCA standards again, 508 and WCAG 1.0. 2013, the fourth template came out. That's where we are now. except for, from what I'm hearing, there's more features there that they're doing now, and are they building a whole new one, or are they just trying to build on top of this one?
This is a complete new one.
This is a complete new one. Okay, so here we go again. Here comes another one. So, but here's the important thing. 2015, I had this marked 2014 before, but now we've changed years. The Access Board has sent the update to the Office of Management and Budget to change the rule, again, in 508, and make it compliant with WCAG 2.0 AA. We've been waiting on this for years. We thought it was going to happen last year. They sent this proposal in February of 2014. The Office of Management and Budget is supposed to have 90 days to review this. They're still reviewing it a year later. So hopefully it's going to happen this year, and we'll see. Now, the one thing I did want to bring up is these court cases. Even though 508 is not technically WCAG 2.0, the courts are forcing it already. I got 3 cases up here if anybody wants to see them. 3 court cases where the courts have come across and said, in order for these companies to be ADA compliant, their website needs to meet WCAG 2.0. So they're already enforcing it even though it's not the law. So here it comes, guys. So let's go to the next one. What I'm not going to talk about here. A lot of you are going to want to know about, how do I make my documents accessible? How do I do Word? How do I do forms? How do I do PDFs? I could sit up here and talk about that for days. I only have an hour here. So I'm going to give you a couple of resources, and it's on these sheet that I'm going to give you guys, or you guys can come up here and get. Number one is the Department of Rehabilitation has a class, and they will teach you how to do Word and forms accessibly. I forget if it's $45 or $85 or something like that. It's not too much. It's pretty cheap. Now, if you want to know how to do PDFs and you want to know how to do them accessible, there's a site on the WebTool. There's a page on the WebTools website, and that's the actual address, where there are some documents that explain in detail how to make a PDF accessible. It's complicated, trust me. So PDFs have huge challenges. If you're going to try to make a PDF accessible, good luck. But you can do it if you go over here to this address and you read about how to do it. There are reading orders that you have to set up and that kind of stuff. So my suggestion to you is, if you've got a document and you can make it a web page, make it a web page. If you can't, and you have to make it a document, try to make it a rich text document. The reason I say rich text is because if you make it a Word document and somebody has WordPerfect, there's a possibility they won't be able to open it. If they have Google Office, they might not be able to open it. So if you can make it a rich text document, make it a rich text document. It makes it a lot more accessible. It's not as accessible as a web page, but it's accessible. Or you can make it accessible. And then if you have to do it in PDFs, do it in PDFs, but you're going to face some challenges. I left my water over here. My water. Later.
Feel free to take one of those on the page.
Oh, thanks. I've been chasing a cough from a cold that I had 3 weeks ago. Makes it tough. The mouth gets dry. Okay, so why do we do this? Well, we're trying to make sure we have comparable access for everyone. Every single person in the state of California needs to be able to get to what we've got, this information that we've got as the government. So we're trying to make this comparable access for everyone. Not to mention there's a law that says we have to. 11135. So the other thing I'm not going to talk about here is screen readers and like Zoom software. I'm going to mention them a little bit when I get into the testing parts, but I'm not going to get into how they work, what they sound like. I mean, we could sit up here and run a screen reader and let you guys hear what it sounds like. A lot of you have heard them. Some of you may not have heard one of them. They're very interesting to listen to, especially when you go and hear it at somebody's desk who uses it every day. I've got a friend that I go and talk to at work that he uses a screen reader, and he has this thing turned up so fast. I walk to his desk and I can't understand what this thing is saying, but he can understand every single word. It's amazing how one sense will take over when you're missing one. So, not going to get into screen readers too much here, how they work and Zoom software, how it works. What we are going to talk about here. Here's we get into the fun stuff here. How do users access the information that we put on our website? Okay, basically, you got to get down to a common denominator. The common denominator on every web page is HTML. I don't care if it's straight built HTML or if it's generated by C#, Visual Basic, MySQL, ASP, PSP, doesn't matter how you generate it, it comes down to the fact that it's HTML. So if we can agree on that common denominator right there, then we can start talking about how do we make this thing accessible. So the other way users access information is with screen readers. The screen reader reads the HTML. So I'm going to get into a little bit here, a little bit later, about how you need to structure your HTML. You need to make sure it's in order that you want it read in. The HTML should be only the text. We use cascading style sheets. We all know that. If you've never been to CSS Zen Garden, what a cool site. They take the same HTML document and everybody starts creating style sheets for it. And you'd be surprised at the different things that people can do with style sheets. Really cool, a lot of the stuff. So the other way people access information is with magnifying software, Zoom text. This reads the page as you present it to them. They can move around your page. They can see stuff on the left and the right. And so all it does is like taking a magnifying glass and sticking it on your screen. That's all it is. So there's two different ways. So you've got the screen readers that read the HTML in order, and you've got the Zoom text which reads the page as you present it. So you have things to think about. Okay, so let's dive into this WCAG 2.0. What they did, they didn't really change much, changed a little bit here and there, but they didn't really change much. What they did was they took all of those guidelines from 1.0 and they threw them into a bucket and they started pulling them out and putting them in 4 principal categories: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So, let's get into perceivable. Perceivable, we're talking about providing text alternatives for non-text content. So this includes things like charts, diagrams, audio recordings, pictures, animations, like if you have a picture of a car engine that moves, you need to tell them this is how an animation of how a car engine works. Image maps, controls, like submit buttons, input fields, you need to mark those with an alternate text. Live media, like traffic cams, I-80 and Sunrise, they got a camera up there. You need to tell people what it is. It's I-80 at Sunrise. Web camera, so if you're doing a test, you need to let them know if it's got, something to do with an image or something. Sensory recordings like a symphony. Tell them it's a San Francisco Symphony Orchestra and playing whatever music they're playing at the time. I'm going to get into CAPTCHAs here for a second. I don't know how many of you are dealing with CAPTCHAs. I've seen, besides reCAPTCHA, I've never seen a CAPTCHA that worked accessibly. reCAPTCHA works accessibly if you can get it to work. So there's another way that a lot of places are changing the way they do these. Instead of doing CAPTCHAs, they're actually asking questions. Which of the and they rotate these questions, so the robots never know what the question is going to be. They change the answers on every question. You know, which of the following is a color? Chrysler, Ford, GM, or blue. So if you rotate those questions and the next question pops up, it's a different question, then the robots can't figure it out. So this is the way a lot of people are going now, is they're using questions, and they're rotating these questions. Get 10 questions together, get the answers, never make the answer in the same spot all the time. I mean, I know you don't have to if you have 10 questions, but start using questions instead of captchas. That's the same way, it'll stop the robots the same way. So then under perceivable, we get into oh, wrong page. Okay, so provide captions and other alternatives for multimedia. We're talking about pre-recorded audio. Give them a text file of the audio so that they can go and read it if they can't hear it. Video media, synchronize your captioning with the content. I know a lot of people struggle with this because they don't know how to get this done. And to be honest with you, you have to go hire a captioning company. It costs money. It's not cheap. But we do it. We hire somebody to caption our videos. So it's not unheard of. If you're doing live media, you need to have a captioning. You got to hire somebody to do the captioning of a live webinar or whatever. I don't know if we're doing it here or not. Are we doing captioning on this webinar? Probably not.
We discussed that.
Yeah, okay.
What are the consequences of this?
Somebody can hold you legally responsible, or your department legally responsible. It gets ugly when you get into the court stuff. The other thing you can do, and you'll see the governor's office does it a lot, is hire a sign language interpreter and put them down in a corner. That's technically a AAA requirement. You don't have to do that, but if you can go that far, just making yourself look good. So try to go there if you can.
So providing minutes of a board meeting, is that enough, or do you have to have the whole?
It should be word for word. If you're talking about an audio or a video presentation, it should be word for word what's going on at the time.
That's if the public is the audience.
Well, if you can define your audience and you know that nobody needs it in your audience, I mean every single person in your audience, then you don't have to do certain things. You don't have to do what you have to do for that audience. But if you're open to the public or you're not sure who your audience is going to be entirely, then you've got to cover the bases. So create content that could be presented in different ways, including by assistive technologies without losing meaning. We're talking about the ability for your users, and browsers are allowing this to happen now, to turn off your style sheets and present them in a way that they want to see it. I've got actually several friends who are low vision users, and they take the white page, turn it black, they take the text and turn it white so they can see it better. So you got to give them the ability to change the style sheets however they want to change them. So if you're using style sheets, make sure that you just use text in your HTML. Don't use any styles in your HTML. Make sure your style sheets are external. Excuse me. Make sure that you relate items. Use your headings correctly. H1s, then H2s, then H3s, then H4s. Don't jump from an H2 to an H4. It's very confusing to somebody that's using a screen reader. A lot of people using screen readers will jump from heading to heading, looking for what they want to know about. They don't want to read everything on the page. They want to know about, where's my DMV handbook? So they are going to jump down to the DMV handbook area. And if you jump from an H2 to an H4, they're going to go, what happened to the H3? So you got to be aware that they're going to expect things to happen a certain way. And that's one of the ways that they do it, is they jump from heading to heading. Required fields on forms. A lot of people like to make required fields red. That's fine, but A screen reader is not going to tell somebody it's red. So if you're going to do it in red, that's fine, but make sure you put an asterisk next to it and tell them up at the top, required fields are red and marked with an asterisk. So that way when they get to the asterisk, they're going to go, oh, I've got to put in my first name. So make sure you do the required fields both ways, or at least put the asterisk on it. You don't really have to do it in red, but at least put the asterisk on it. That way everybody will know where it is. So then we're going to jump into operable, which is the second one. Make all functionality available from a keyboard. So we're talking about keyboard controls and allowing people to use a tab key to get through, or use a function key to go to a certain place, or a control key to go to a certain place. The other thing we're talking about is don't make keyboard traps. I got in this one page one day, got halfway through the page, and I hit a keyboard trap. I couldn't go forward, I couldn't go backwards. Only thing I could do was refresh the page, which puts me back at the top of the page, and I have to go through everything again. And then I got to that trap again, stopped me again. I couldn't get to the content at the bottom of the page. There was no way. Go ahead.
What is the keyboard trap?
Well, you know what? I don't know how they do it. I don't know how these keyboard traps happen. For some reason, there's something about the way they code it, whether they do some kind of rollover that changes the color or something. I haven't figured out exactly how to make a keyboard trap. All I know is when you're testing your sites, if you hit a keyboard trap, you did something in the coding on that link or that place that's making things stop. So go back and reevaluate your code. That's all I can tell you, because I don't know how they do it. I don't know how it happens. I can never figure it out. What are they doing? So if I did figure it out, I forgot it. So I don't know how to do it. If you find you did it, go back and fix it. So give users enough time to read and use content. A lot of times we time things. I don't know if any of you have Golden One. I'm sure you do. If you get on the Golden One site and you stay on there a long time, it'll eventually come up and it'll tell you, you're about to time out and we're going to log you off. Unless you want to go a little longer. If you have to time things for people, make sure you give them the ability to stop the timer or extend the timer. Now, there's exceptions to that. I mean, in situations where you're doing an auction, you have a time limit. You know, eBay has time limits. At certain times, that's it. You're done. So we understand those. I mean, and everybody's going to understand those kinds of things when there's real-time events, what they call real-time events. Now, you can go too far with allowing people to extend things. Most experts say don't go over 20 hours. If you're giving somebody more than 20 hours to do something, it's time to shut it down, because they're not going to stay on it that long. I don't know how many of you guys get on the computer and stay on it for 20 hours, but I don't. So, don't use content that causes seizures. Moving, blinking, flashing, auto-updating. Allow people to stop this stuff. Yeah, turn it off. Allow them to turn it off, because you really don't want to be responsible for causing somebody to have a seizure. That's not something that makes you feel good. Help users navigate and find content. State of California was smart enough years ago to put in a skip the content or skip navigation. It's kind of cool the way they did it. They put it off the page until you hit it with a tab key, and then all of a sudden it jumps on the page, which is really nice. A lot of people think you should hide it permanently, but I used to have a boss who had no arms, no legs, and the way he navigated a website was with a stick in his mouth. And for him to try to tab all the way through the navigation was really a pain. So he would go to the skip navigation menu, hit the skip to content, and he'd be right down in the content where he wanted to be. It also works for screen readers. Screen reader, they don't like going through all the navigation every time they go to a page, so they want to skip to the content. So make sure you put your skip to content on there, or skip to navigation, whichever way you want to call it. Define your links. A lot of people like to use the more or what's the other one they like? Click here.
Read this.
Read this. When people with screen readers go to websites, a lot of them use the headings and jump from heading to heading. A lot of them skip from link to link to link to link to link. When they're going through links and all they hear is more, click here.
Read this. Read this.
Read this. They go, what? What are you talking about? Define your links. For more information about Patrick Johnson, you know, make this more information about Patrick Johnson, make that your link. So define your links. Don't make them generic, because people don't understand what they are when they're generic. So the next part is understandable. Make text readable and understandable, of course. Set your default language on your pages up the top. I think it's in the XML statement. Set your default languages. If you need to change languages, there is a language attribute you can use in the middle of a page. In a paragraph, you can say, oh, I'm going to change to Spanish for a second, and then turn it off, go back to English. So you can do that in line in the middle of a paragraph. WUG. Define your acronyms. Tell people what they are. They say every time you use an acronym on a page, the very first time you use it, you should be defining it. Webmaster User Group. WUG. Define your acronyms. If you use some big words, make them a link to a glossary. Define the words for them. The other thing that goes along with that is reading levels. They've decided that, I don't know how many of you guys have kids, probably a lot of you. How many of them have been in middle school, 12, 13 years old? That's the reading level you should be writing for. Middle school, 12 years, 13 years old. Can you explain something to your 12-year-old and put it on your website the same way you explained it to them? If you have to use words bigger than that, you have to give them a glossary. Give them a link to a glossary for that word. Define that word for them. Kids are sponges at that age. They just want to learn. Tell them what the word means. Making content appear and operate in a predictable way. This gets back to the consistent navigation, which we do on all the state templates. The navigation is the same on every single page. That's consistency. That's making the content operate in a predictable way. Avoid the pop-up windows. Users that use screen readers don't realize that you've popped up a window. I'm not saying you can't do it, but if you're going to do it, you need to tell them beforehand. This will pop up a new window. This will open a new browser window. This will open a new tab. Whatever it is you're doing, you need to tell them so they know what's going on, so they understand what's going on their computer. Consistent, yes.
So on our website, when we have a link that takes a user to another agency's website or some other outside of our website, we always have it open up a new window.
A new tab or a whole new window, a whole new browser?
Yes. So do we define that in the link, or we have to stay somewhere after the text of the link?
It should be included in a link, because remember, a lot of people bounce from link to link to link.
Mm-hmm.
So if they go to a link, yeah, the question was, where should you define that when you're telling someone that you're going to take them to a new browser window? The answer is, you need to tell them in the link. I mean, it could be something as short as included in the link, in parentheses, it says opens new browser window. It's that simple to add that into the link. Because if you don't tell them beforehand, again, they're not going to understand what's happening. Yes?
Now, you mentioned it in the actual textual link.
Yes.
Now, what if you put it in your title tag, your title attributes, or attributes within that tag?
Well, title tags, and I was going to get into the title tag here in just a minute. The title tag doesn't work on all screen readers. Did you know that? Title tags don't work on all screen readers. They work on some, but they don't work on all of them. If you're going to do it, you can put it in the alt tag. The alt tag is the one that's read by all the screen readers. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use the title tag. Title tags are great, they're cool, they work really well, but they don't work on all screen readers. So they become useless when you get to the screen readers that don't use them. So we're not making things accessible to everybody. If you're doing that, you're leaving out some people by putting it just in the title tag. So put it in the alt tag, you could do that. Because usually that's the people that are going to be not understanding that you popped up a new window are the ones that are going to be reading that alt tag. So I can't think of another reason that would.
iframe on page.
Iframes.
We're not supposed to use iframes, but we have our intro.
Are they named? You should be naming your iframes. Tell people what that frame is for.
We don't have that many.
Because screen readers can access iframes, but if they don't understand what that iframe is for, you need to notify them. You need to tell them what it's for. Okay, so let's see, consistent. I wrote consistent identification down here. Don't know where I was referring to that, but be consistent with whatever you do. Be consistent. Oh, I know what I was talking about. If you're going to call something a consumer handbook on one page, make sure you call it a consumer handbook on another page. Don't call it consumer book, or don't change the name. Call it the same thing wherever you refer to that. Call it the same thing. DMV driver's handbook. Don't call it a teen driver handbook on another page. It's the same thing. Call it the same thing. When you call it on one thing, call it on another page the same thing. So the last one on this understandable page is help users avoid and correct mistakes. If somebody is filling out a form and they put their phone number in wrong, don't just tell them they made a mistake. Tell them what the mistake is. And you entered their phone number field incorrectly. Give them instructions about how to fix it. It should be in this format: 3 numbers, a dash, 3 numbers, a dash, and 4 numbers. Or if you want it in parentheses, tell them the area code in parentheses. Tell them to put it in parentheses. Define to them how you want them to fill out the form. And actually, we go so far as to do that before they make the error. When we're on the page where you fill out the form and it asks for your phone number, it gives you an example right next to it. Example: 3 numbers, a dash, 3 numbers, and 4 numbers, a dash and 4 numbers. We define it for them beforehand. But if they still do it wrong, we define it. We tell them, you made a mistake on the phone number, it needs to be this format. So, and then allow them to go back and fix it. So, the other thing that they say to do is make sure you notify a user when they're about to do something that's irreversible. If they're filling out a form, say this will submit your form, period. If you're going to say this will open up a page and allow you to review your information to ensure correctness, tell them that. And at the bottom of that page, this will finally submit your document. And they will understand that this is irreversible. Make sure you tell them it's irreversible if it is. Okay, last one. Robust. The last category they put things in W3C. Maximize compatibility with current and future user tools. I love where we're going with the new template. Making it so that we can make it backwards compatible. So what we're talking about here is using your end tags, making sure you nest your links, your lists correctly. Make sure you validate your documents before you put them out there, W3C compliant. Make sure you use form controls. Make sure you use the labels when you're doing edit boxes or edit fields. Make sure you put your labels on there. A lot of people think I should put the labels around the edit box. Well, there's another side of the community that thinks that's not good enough. You need to include the text and put the label all the way around the text and the edit box. That way it's all defined and all labeled. So do it whatever way you want. I think you should include the text when you put the label on there. So that's it for how they did the W3C 2.0. There's not that much difference in the 1.0 and the 2.0. There's a few little things. They added this thing called luminosity to the color contrast thing. It used to be what was it? It used to be brightness and color difference. Now they've added this thing in there called luminosity. I had the definition, but it's back there. I left it back there. Webster defines it as kind of how bright an object is. I thought about it and I tried to define it myself, and it seems like the difference between saying something is yellow and saying something is fluorescent yellow, which they don't have fluorescent up here, but it could be the same color yellow, but one of them is fluorescent. Yellow's not. That's the way I figured luminosity works. But I'm going to show you a little bit about that here in just a second. For right now, let's talk about testing real quick. How much time do I have? Where am I at?
Okay.
Oh, I'm good. Okay. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So you can get a free screen reader, guys. Free if you have Microsoft Office 2010 or newer, which I think all of us are probably pretty much to 2010. WindowsForOffice.com. It's on this piece of paper if you want to come get these links. So you don't have to write it down. JAWS, you can get JAWS as a free demo, which will work for 30 minutes if you want to test some things. I'll tell you a secret that I'm not supposed to tell you. I should probably cover up this microphone. If you reboot your computer, you can use it for another 30 minutes. But really, you should go out and buy it. Okay, they're not that bad, and your department should be able to afford to buy you a screen reader if you want JAWS. JAWS is the most used screen reader out there. WindowEyes is right behind it, and since WindowEyes is now becoming free for a lot of people, WindowEyes is catching up fast. So get one of those two. There's some others out there that you can get. These are the two most widely used. Now let's talk about accessibility checkers for a second. We've been around and around about this argument for a long time. Accessibility checkers will check about 25 to 30% of what you need it to check. The other 70% of it, you got to go in there and check it yourself. It'll tell you if there's an alt tag on an image, but it won't tell you what that alt tag is. It won't tell you if it's right. If you put in a file name in the alt text, it's not going to tell you that's wrong. It's not going to tell you, you need to define that as a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's not going to tell you that. You have to go in there and check that. So the other 70% of it, you have to go in there and check. Once you start doing things accessible and you get to the point where it's built into your brain. I mean, I've been doing this since 1996. I don't even have to look at this stuff anymore. I can look at a page and tell you if it's accessible or not, or at least look at the code of it and then tell you if it's accessible. You get used to it, and it just becomes habit after that. So you have to go in there and check them. I don't even use a screen checker most of the time. I mean, sometimes I will, but yes, sir.
Do you have suggestions on how to use JAWS testing? Do you need someone?
I can barely hear you. I'm sorry.
Do you have suggestions on how to use JAWS testing?
Oh.
Do you need someone who is very familiar with that technology?
No. You don't need someone that's familiar. The question was, do I have any suggestions about how to use JAWS to test things? JAWS is complicated. That's a 3-day course probably right there. You can stumble through it, I did. They will give you, there are pages that will define every single key combination that will work your way through JAWS. I mean, you can tell it to read the whole page. You can tell it to read one line at a time. You can tell it to read one word at a time. You can tell it to read one letter at a time. And there's commands for that. And they have a page that they provide out on their website that will tell you how to do those commands. And once you get, like I said, it's the same thing. Once you start using it a lot, you kind of get used to it. People use it every day. I'm telling you, man, some of those people have the speech speed turned up so fast, it just comes across as gibberish to me, and I don't see how they hear it, but they do. So I can't give you suggestions about how to test it. It's something you kind of have to get through unless you want to go take a class. Speaking of classes, well, I'll get to that here in a second. All right, this is reading resources for you. Why do we do this? Again, it's comparable access for everyone. I mean, everyone in the state of California, as best we can. I mean, we don't have to worry about the 6-year-olds, but anybody from middle school up, we probably need to give them as much access to information as we can. It's also the right thing to do. Then if you really want to read about it, California Government Code Section 11135, there's a link to it. It's on this piece of paper, if you guys want this piece of paper. The State Administrative Manual, Section 4833, it's also on this list. The State Information Management Manual, Section 25, it's also on this list. They all refer to the fact that we're going to abide by Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, including when it changes to WCAG 2.0, which is coming. The courts are already enforcing. All right, working resources. Here we get to the fun stuff. I love this color wheel. Although it has one drawback. So this is a color wheel that will help you figure out if your color combinations are going to work. So I'm just going to go to it because this link is on that piece of paper. It's also on this page at the very top. So this color wheel is really neat, the way it works. So, but there's one little catch to it. If you notice right over here, on the right side, there's edit boxes for you to put in the hexadecimal values of your colors if you want to check specific colors. Here's the problem. You're over here, on the right side, putting in these hexadecimal values. Then you roll across here to click this button that says background so that you can roll back across here to put it in this second box. Well, guess what you did? When you rolled across this color wheel, it changed your first value. So what you got to do is you got to go up and over the top or down through the bottom. Bad design, if you ask me. They should have put these buttons over here. So be careful when you're using this thing. The other thing I find about this thing is really cool is this normal text right here. The new WCAG 2.0 says if your fonts are 18 points or higher, you don't have to meet as high a contrast level. So on this thing, you can change this from normal text to large text, and it'll change the contrast for you and tell you whether it's going to be compliant or not. Right up here. It'll tell you if it's okay, or it'll tell you if it doesn't say okay right there, it's not okay. So you can change this, and this works really well for WCAG 2.0. If you want to go back to 1.0, you can do that right down below. There's no reason to go there if you ask me. The other neat thing about this color wheel, these things down here at the bottom, and I don't think you can see it on the screen. No, you can't tell. These, if you look at this on the actual website, these 3 paragraphs right here at the very bottom will give you examples of certain color blindnesses. So if you want to know what it's like to have whatever this thing is called, it'll show you, when you put in your colors up there, it'll show you what it'll look like to somebody with that color blindness. So I like this. I like this little color wheel. It's kind of cool. There's others out there. Stanford has some color checkers. It's called SOAP, S-O-A-P. There's some others anyway. But this color wheel is on this list of links over here. By the way, I need to give you this page right here to post on the website with all the other stuff. Okay. More resources. Section 508. there's a website called section508.gov. I'll tell you right now, it's not updated with WCAG 2.0. I don't know when they're going to update it. I guess when the Access Board finally gets their proposal through Office of Management and Budget, and the legislature finally says, okay, we're going to make this part of 508. Then it'll get put on there probably. But you really don't need to worry about that too much, because the real resource you need right here is the W3C's Quick Reference Guide for WCAG 2.0. This document, and this is where I'm going to get into telling you how to do things, but I'm not going to tell you how to do things because I don't have time. I'm almost out of time now. To teach you how to do things is going to take 3 days at least, possibly a week, even if we stay within the common denominator of HTML, instead of getting into the things that generate HTML, PSP, ASP, Silverlight, all those things that generate the HTML. We could be talking about a month. So we are talking about a class here in the future. One of the things you're going to see here in the next month is a survey go out. We're going to give you guys a month to go read this link right here. I'm going to show you this page here in a second. We're going to give you a month, about a month, to read this quick reference sheet. This quick reference sheet has techniques in it. It will tell you exactly how to do things. You can dive down into things. It has understanding the link. It has documents that teach you about that particular guideline, tell you why that guideline works, how it works, why we do it. So for each guideline, it has those understanding documents and techniques documents. So it will tell you exactly how to code this in HTML. Actually, I think it even gets into some of the ASP, the Flash, Silverlight. I think it'll even get into some of that. But if you go and you read this thing right here, then we're going to pop a questionnaire on you in about a month. We're going to ask you, what do you want to know about? What didn't you get answered? Tell us what you want to know about. What you want to know about. We're going to create a class. And we're going to focus it on your questions. We're going to teach you everything, HTML-wise, but we're going to focus it on your questions. Try and focus on those particular questions. How do I do tables? How do I do edit boxes? How do I do drop-down menus? And we're going to try and focus. If that's what your question is, send us the question. Send us what you want to know about. And we'll try and include that in the course. And then we'll allow you guys to come take this course. This is not going to be a one-day course. It's going to be a 3-day, at least maybe a week-long course. So that's why I can't teach you how to do it here. I don't have time. I only have an hour. And you're out. I'm out of time. Okay, so remember, the law requires AA compliance. This is that WCAG 2.0 quick reference page, the top of it anyway. The reason I brought this up is because I wanted to point out to you guys, this box on the right-hand side allows you to customize this page however you want. If you don't want to know the AAA sources, you don't even want to deal with AAA, I wish you wouldn't, but if you really decide you have to. A lot of these AAA things you can do, they're real easy to do. Some of them are a little more difficult, like getting the sign language interpreter for a video. So, but if you want to eliminate those, you can eliminate those. If you don't want to know about ARIA, you can eliminate that. ARIA is one of the more accessible, what am I trying to think of? Just totally lost it. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. So if you don't want to know about Silverlight, you don't want to know about Flash, you can take those out, and it kind of makes this document get smaller. Okay, so be aware that you can customize this page however you want. Okay, that's the reason I brought this part of it up. So this is the beginning of it, and this is all the way it scrolls down. It's really long. You can make it smaller, but it'll show you techniques. It'll show you why we do these things, all of that stuff. So we're back to your page. I'm done. Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be around here somewhere.